Well, good evening and welcome to our webinar about Stuck and clients that are potentially experiencing stuck and how we're going to help them get unstuck through using a coaching approach or various coaching approaches. So it's exciting to have you here, and we're going to just take a little bit of time just to wait for a few more people to arrive, hopefully, and then we'll spend about, I don't know, 35 or 45 minutes looking at some ideas, and hopefully there's some interaction around it, and then we'll take some questions and answers for it. So I just see not too many people have arrived yet, but we'll begin anyways. So, I mean, why did we choose this topic? Well, we're trying to create in our webinar series a number of things that help people be connected to and interested in just a variety of ways that we approach coaching and how it helps people. In this case, we're really talking about this whole idea of someone being stuck. And that's the main challenge that happens. Now, in our coach training programs, we spend a lot of time on this and obviously do some practices and make sure that people have the opportunity to learn, and there's various levels to it. But I don't want to duplicate the content that we train, but definitely want to work through some of the contexts that are there. So a little bit about me, you can read that if you wish. I'm currently Academy Director of our Professional Coaching Academy and also Director of our newly minted institute, Transcend International Institute of Team Coaching Excellence. And that will be a growing thing in the future. But I wanted to, begin the conversation just by finding out, and not everyone might be able to do this, but if you can sort of move your mouse around your screen, you'll notice at the top there's a menu bar. There should be some options there. It might be at the bottom for you. I'm not sure where it is. But then you might see 3 dots. That is a more button. But if you could just find, there's a pencil there, and there's a command called annotate. And with annotate, you can just write something. So if you click annotate, love for you to do it now. And then if you click text, so you click annotate and a little menu bar opens up. It says mouse, select, text, draw, that kind of idea. So if you select text and then click anywhere, then you can type your response. So when a client experiences being stuck, what does a coach experience? Well, they might experience panic. What else? So someone else write something if you can. So just click on text and write what you think a coach might experience when a client feels stuck. So let's see if we can get some more responses there. What is a client, when a client's stuck, what does a coach often do? So I put panic. Someone else put it helps to, which I'm not sure how that happened. But if you could just try to do that, that would be great. Okay, someone else put needs to help. Yeah, very often a coach will feel like they need to help. Maybe someone's having some troubles with it. Needs to help. Okay, maybe that feature is not working well for you, but that's all right. But let's just look at a couple of things that normally helps him to get to the bottom of the problem, or helps her to get to the bottom of the problem. Yeah, well, that's what a coach might do. I guess we're looking a little bit more for what the coach might experience. So this is so much more about the feeling that a coach has when they're in the state where their client has said they're stuck or is stuck. So very often Coaches will, yeah, obviously they might try to help or feel the need to help, which is really key. So what are the keys to this whole stuck universe? Empathy. Yeah, definitely. Great. Thank you. Empathy is absolutely normal, and that's great, actually. And I guess the question always for the coach is the coach feels empathy. Are they empathizing with the client's stuckness or feeling of stuck or suffering as they're stuck in some situation? Or are they being empathetic in general? And I say that because there's often, and I'll shift to the next screen in a second, this often creates another challenge for us, which is this. The next question is very similar, which is when a coach is stuck, what does a client experience? So again, if you want to use that annotate feature, you can put something in there, but just segueing that the coach is useless, very much could be that. It could definitely that. Sometimes the coach gets stuck as well. The client might think this coach cannot help me. The problem is deep. I don't know why those are disappearing so quickly, but yeah, feel free to add more if you come up with some ideas. That would be great. So the client experiences that if the coach gets stuck, then the client experiences maybe their coach is not helpful, maybe their coach is, to use the words that were used here, useless, or the coach doesn't understand, which can be a bit of a challenge, but often there's this disconnect. Client thinks the coach cannot understand because the problem is deep and he cannot feel the same. Definitely could be the case. Lots of possible things that could happen, for that, definitely. Wait, more is coming up. I'll get my annotation bar back as well. Oops, sorry about that. I think the main thing that really comes out of this, maybe someone put a message in the chat. Oops. Coach is on the left leg, so I'm on the right leg. What to do? Okay. Thank you, Dejan. Interesting thought. Yeah, so we get kind of confused, and this is a big challenge. There's this disconnection, and that's why stuck is one. It's a very normal experience for clients, and it's a very normal experience for coaches. And in order for us to really help people, we need to become skilled with this quite common thing that happens. So I'm just going to clear that, and we'll move to the next slide and begin to look at some important questions around stuck. So if you want, I'd love to have you put something in the chat in response to this idea. But the question that we really want to ask is, who decides if the client is stuck? And okay, we're still annotating. Yes, wonderful. Right. The client usually is the person that we want to decide. In fact, what you really want, now depending on the type of stuck, and we'll talk about that in a minute, we want our client to actually describe the felt state of being stuck. The person who must never decide if their client is stuck is the coach. Because one of the key qualities in coaching is that we're non-directive, we're non-judgmental, and we partner with our clients. So the challenge for the coach is you're working with a client and you think that they're stuck. And as soon as you decide that they're stuck, you'll begin to act however you act when you think someone's stuck. So this is where coaches will overhelp, they'll over-empathize, they'll begin to diagnose, they might begin to panic, they might begin to struggle. So that the real challenge here is that the coach needs to just not decide that the client is stuck, but ask their client, as you describe the situation, how are you feeling? As you talk about this cycle that you're in, how would you describe your predicament? So we're asking that we're creating space for the client to really determine where they're at. And this is really important, because if the coach does it, then the coach is taking away the empowerment, that the client has to make that decision. So it's really, really key, and I hope that makes sense to you. But let's begin to ask this question. When someone says that they're stuck, what do you think that they mean? What do you think people mean when they say that they're stuck? What do you think that the meaning of that word is? If I say I'm stuck, maybe yes, someone's putting something in the chat. That'd be awesome if we use chat. Thank you. They have a big problem and not move further. They don't see a solution or a way to go on. Great. They don't know where to go. Wonderful. They're confused and need guidance. Great. You're getting to some of the reasons that they might mean what they're looking for. They don't have a clear view on options. Yeah, that's very possible as well. In the end, again, as a coach, we don't know what they mean. So this becomes the question that we want to make sure that we get them to respond to. When you say you're stuck, what does that mean to you? They may have lost track of their real goals in life and business. Thank you for that one as well. So yeah, there's lots of different kinds of stuck. But what is their particular experience of it is something that we want them to get clear on. Not necessarily clear, but explore, so that they can understand their experience, and they can also begin to look at how, and we can partner with them to find ways to help them to move when they're stuck. So they could mean lots of things, and that's the real key challenge to us. So we want to understand what they mean by it. And actually, let me just go back for a second, because there's lots of shades to this. So if I say I'm stuck, I might mean I just don't have a clear view on options, as someone put that's one thing. I don't know where to go next. That could be another thing that someone said. I lost track in my real goals in life and business. This could have been for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. So I don't know how long they've been stuck. So do I feel like I've been going down a blind alley and I just realized I spent 10 years of my life doing something that isn't the thing I really want? That's a very different kind of stuck than I don't know what I can do next. So it can be a big problem. And it can be, I just don't see a way out. I'm a bit trapped. So it's really just useful for us as coaches in particular to explore this whole idea of stuck. So the next phase, or the next idea, is to begin to explore where people are stuck. So here's some ideas and some images that will hopefully get you understanding some of the different ways. So the first image of somebody that doesn't have, they're in front of a maze and they don't really have a choice. A fish that's swimming the other way from all the other fishes. Cogs in a wheel, compass, lack of direction, an escalator that's going nowhere, or maybe stuck in conversations or relationship or cycles. So there's lots of different ways that people are stuck. And what I want to do is just give you some of the layers that we work with in coaches before we shift to some real practical kind of questions and ideas that are moving. And I'd love to just begin to get from you, perhaps in chat, or you can unmute yourself if you want, the idea of what are some situations that you've been stuck in or your clients have been stuck in. So when I say situation, what does that mean to you when you think about what are some kinds of situations that people can get stuck in?
Hi, Craig.
Hi, Dariana. Thank you. What's your thought on this?
Hi. Well, as a personal experience, I got stuck for a few years in the cycle. Where
okay, cycle.
For example, you think life should be done one way, okay? And therefore, sometimes, if I'm thinking to life coaching experience, you realize that you put aside some things that you wanted to do, for example, and then only after years you realize that why the hell you did it. Perhaps that could be the good way, and you just lost time, you just wasted it. And this is actually my experience with the coaching. I'm starting with you next week, so that could be a situation.
Definitely, yeah. And that's like a cycle of very often people, very common in coaching. People choose something over something else. For instance, a child, or deny yourself for some reason, or not do something, and then it just becomes the situation. Yeah, it's the cycle, right? Where you're in a place and you just keep not choosing. Very often, not choosing ourselves. Is a common cycle. Thank you. Can I just see if someone else is available as well? Anyone else have any experience or idea about that? Thanks, Dariana.
Thanks to you.
All right. Thanks for being brave, Dariana. So let me try to explore this a little bit. So first of all, cycles. So it can be cycle of mistakes. Similar, I make the same mistakes over again. It can be a cycle of relationships. Very often, a vicious kind of circle is kind of the idea. I keep ending up in the same place. So people can be stuck in this cycle of dieting and then going off the diet and then going back. It can also work with addictions. So it's more like this pattern that we're stuck in. And this is quite a common one for people to be caught in. Another one is this whole idea of situation. And situation often can be like, I'm in a job I don't like. My company was bought out by another company, and the organization's changed, so I feel stuck in this situation. Sometimes it's because of choices that we made. I chose to shift careers, and I started at the bottom again. So now I'm in this situation where I don't feel valued, I don't feel stable. It can also be a situation that people get themselves in by making bad choices or unethical choices. From a coaching supervision perspective, as I work with a lot of coaches, the coach has made an ethical compromise of some sort. then they've created a situation, and now they're sort of stuck in it because they created this situation, and that's where they are. So often we're stuck in, or we feel like we're stuck in things that are potentially outside of our control. By some reason that might not even be, our fault. Many people feel stuck at home in the COVID crisis. I'm stuck. When I moved to Hong Kong, I was in a job that I shifted to, and it was pretty secure. And then we had a financial crash in 2008. I couldn't shift. I couldn't leave. I was sort of stuck because I was in a good place. It wasn't exactly where I wanted to be at the time, but the market for what I did for a living at the time was very, very poor. So I was very lucky to have a job. So was I stuck or was I fortunate? It depends on how I looked at it from day to day. So this whole exploration is for you to begin to think about, like when you're working with a client, or even as you think about yourself, what kind of stuck and where are you? So stuck in a cycle is different than stuck in a situation. And then these other 4 words are 4 balances that we work with clients around. And I'm just going to describe stuck in each of those kinds of ways, and give you some perspective, because very often the roots of stuck are actually to be found in these key 4 balances, which is the way that we work with clients to help them transform themselves and the world that they're in. So the first is cognitive stuck. And this is stuck, if you can imagine, in ways of thinking. This is patterns of thinking. So some people, whether it's a situation or a cycle, it could be a cognitive reason that they're stuck. They cannot think of any options because their attention is grasped by whatever it happens to be. I have to do this. I made this choice, and now I need to stay with this. So they're cognitive. They're stuck because of their own thinking. And again, coaches, you need to be skilled at exploring and helping people to become aware of their own assumptions, of their own thoughts, and how this all contributes to this state of being potentially very cognitively stuck. And I mean, anybody, can you relate to this idea? Not necessarily yourself, but even someone else that you know. Can you think of a boss? Can you think of a world leader? Can you think of yourself when you've been stuck in some particular pattern of thinking or way of thinking about someone, about some situation, about some event? So you're actually stuck in your own thinking. Does any of that make sense to anybody?
Definitely.
Thanks. So they could be stuck in their thinking. Emotional stuck is something quite different, and this often triggers this whole idea, strength of empathy, and often this is where coaches will that over-empathize with their clients, or maybe over-sympathize with their clients, get caught, is because the feeling of stuck can be so intense that people are actually stuck in an emotion. So this could be worry, this could be fear, this could be anxiety. So very often extreme emotions, or it can also be quite positive emotions. Like, I really care about that person in my organization. I feel a strong connection to them. I feel, I hired them, I helped them grow, so I have this affection for them. That's okay, it's proper. So this emotional stuck is also an area where people can really, really get stuck in an emotional cycle or an emotional. So this is way of feeling. So we can be stuck in our way of feeling. which is really this, you know, I feel hurt by when people say these things, or I get knocked. I had a situation come up just yesterday and today where I was making progress on a very big project, and something came up that made me feel like emotionally not hurt, but just discouraged. So I felt I was like, my progress was limited because I felt this emotion. So sometimes as coaches, we need to help people get unstuck from their emotions. But of course, to move beyond that, we also have to realize that emotions and thinking are very much linked. So the way I think about a person will trigger emotions. And the way I feel about a person will trigger thoughts that then in turn trigger emotions, and then in turn trigger thoughts. So often there's this link in the cycle that happens here. So we have to just be really skilled as coaches as helping our clients to begin to navigate all the dimensions of where they're stuck. And this is where questions really, you know, our ability to ask skillful questions to help our clients is really key. So that's giving you some perspective on where, and obviously the approach will differ depending on where their main stuck is, or whether it's a combination. Motivational is the next one, and motivational relates not just to I'm not motivated, but this is much more in the line of values, of core values, of beliefs, of the way I make sense of the world, what gives me purpose and meaning. And this can be a place where people are stuck. It's quite common actually, but it's hard for people to recognize this idea of, I expect the world to be this way, and I live this way. You know, almost, why can't others do that? Or why doesn't the world work? Or my purposes and what gives me meaning is frustrated. So actually, I'm stuck in this sense that I'm trying to be this kind of person. It's not working. Or I'd like to be motivated by deeper things. And I find that, you know, in reality, maybe I'm motivated I just want to look good. So there's something, I'm stuck in the fact that I'd love to have my life guided by some deeper principles, some core values, and yet I seem to be not able to orientate my life in this way. And this is really where we work with people in the dimension of helping them to figure out, is there a value? What is your values? What are your values? Are they in conflict? Are they really in conflict? Are you really stuck? Or is your motivation, again, creating a way of thinking or a way of feeling that is making you experience what you would call stuck as a client? So, you know, the pathway here is to work with clients on a deep level. What is it that's really at stake? And this, just to share like an example from a client perspective, is I'm thinking of a client and like generalized clients and sort of combine, you know, different people together as I you know, sort of create a picture of this. But I'm just thinking of a client that's unable to motivate themselves. So they're actually stuck in a lack of motivation to do something that they really, really think is important and meaningful, or they say is important and meaningful to them, but yet they're unable to orientate their energy, their resources to do this. So they feel stuck in that they're not being true to what they think they should bring to the world. And that can be very, you know, stressful and challenging for somebody. So that's a different kind of experience, right? And it sounds deep because it is. It's a deep stuck. But on another level, motivational might turn up as a I worked with a number of clients who were in a job where they lost their sense of motivation. So they were in a situation where what they figured out they were really stuck in was that their motivation had gone. So again, we want to help them explore what's really the issue here, what's really going on. And in some cases, when someone's emotionally stuck, they're frustrated, we can actually explore their motivational balance, their motivational orientation. And that helps us to help them become aware of why do I feel so stuck in this, with this new company that's taken over? It's because that some of my values are actually maybe threatened or being violated by this new organization, or I'm suspicious they will be. So I'm thinking there will be a situation in the future where I will be asked to compromise my values. So that projection onto the future is actually affecting my motivation present, and therefore I'm not able to, do my job well. So that's motivational. And then the last one is this whole idea of attentional, where someone is stuck. And this is, something we really specialize in, is that people just aren't able to focus. They aren't able to bring their attention on the situation at hand. They're not able to manage their attention skillfully enough. So what they're actually stuck in is their own inability to hold attention on what really matters. And they lose focus, they lose the goal, and therefore they're stuck in a cycle of setting a goal and losing focus on the goal, and then being frustrated with themselves, and then setting a different goal, and then losing sight of that goal and coming back. So that's this sort of inability to manage their attention in a skillful way, or inability to remember what's really important and keep my life orientated to that, much like the compass. So there's some ideas to hopefully get you to think differently about stuck than maybe you have. So we've looked at what do they mean, and as a, if you're stuck, then beginning to think what do you mean by it, and then begin to think, where are you stuck? That's really, really key. But we're going to go to the next slide, where we begin to look at some of the tips for you as coaches to explore. And there's some questions here that obviously we would ask as coaches along the way, and I'll just explain some of these to you as we go along, and feel free to interrupt with a question. Just put it in the chat, or just unmute yourself and say question. But as soon as I finish this, we'll take questions and answers. So you can wait as well, but I'm happy to pause at any time. So some just key tips for you if you have clients that are stuck. The first thing is, don't assume that they want to be unstuck. This is just a simple, common mistake that coaches and any helping professional will make. If someone tells you, I'm stuck, our immediate assumption is that's a problem and they want to be unstuck. But I would say, don't assume that they want to be unstuck. The question that we like to ask people is, what does stuck give you? And that can sound like a very strange question, but many times people that are stuck in like, I'm not motivated to this, I'm not motivated to that. I had one client that I asked him, what does stuck give you? And, being stuck. And he said, it gives me an excuse. And, and then we were able to explore that and help him to, look at what possibly he might do other than that. So this is the whole idea, like, this is key for us, especially if we love to help people. We have to, coaching requires the person we're working with to want to dance, to want to move. So We need to be careful about assuming they want to move just because they've presented this problem or issue and said, I'm stuck. Our immediate assumption is that that's bad and they want to get unstuck. And I would just say, ask. That's what coaches do. We ask questions. So, my favorite question, in this context is always, well, would you like to change that? Because everyone else just tries to help you. We want to say, well, what's it like? The second thing is related to the things that I just showed you, really, is don't be in a hurry. Explore their experience of being stuck. Again, we just want to help people so fast, and that help can often be rejected or inefficient, or it can lead to us not understanding what's really happening. And some of the things you wrote earlier fit with this whole idea, right? The coach doesn't understand me. So let's just explore their experience. You're stuck. What does that feel like? How do you feel as you talk about it? Do you want to change it? Have you been stuck before? What was that like? What do you want to do? And using those lenses of emotions, what are you thinking when you say you're stuck? What are you feeling when you say you're stuck? What are you motivated by as you're saying you're stuck? And then what are you paying attention to? And all that. So it's useful to just explore. And coaches that can get patient and skillful with this will create value for their clients in ways that their clients don't expect, is what I would say. And one of the things about it is that often you uncover assumptions or hidden commitments, and often ways of thinking. Often people will simply say they're stuck or think they're stuck, and they're not really stuck. It feels worse than it is. And again, you're helping them to learn how they can be more effective and how they can be more skillful. So exploring stuck, again, I want to explore their thinking. Why they're stuck is not useful. What makes them think that, what's bad about stuck? What's wrong with this stuck thing? And that's a pretty clumsy question, the way I typed it as I read it out loud now, but I really see that, why, I want them to, in their mind, two things that are two dimensions to this question, help them to understand why they think being stuck is bad, but also resisting the temptation as a coach of trying to get to the bottom of it. How did you get stuck? Why are you stuck? Why do you think you're stuck? And in our particular brand of coaching, we're very careful with this why question. And actually, it's almost unnecessary when people are stuck. How did you get there is often irrelevant when you're feeling stuck. What the person really feels, if they're truly stuck, is, I would like to get out of this. So how I got here right now, having a conversation about that, not helpful. Helping me begin to move, helping me begin to find a way out, useful. We can learn along the way the why. It usually just comes. But very often, why they're stuck is not necessarily useful. Trying to get to the bottom of it, to drill down, not as useful as, how are you thinking about your situation? What kind of stuck are you experiencing? When you say you're stuck, what do you mean? What are you feeling as you talk about that kind of questioning? What would you, that's a move that we would do for sure. All right, so I'm sure this is hopefully interesting for you as we move through some ways to work with people. The next is duration. How long have they been stuck? This is an important thing for you to know. So figuring out why they're stuck, not as helpful as how long. How long have you been trying to lose weight and it's not working? How long have you been in a cycle of bad relationships? How long have you felt like you were stuck in this position in your organization? How long have you not wanted to be a salesperson and you're a salesperson? So how long they've been stuck is important, because that just gives you a sense of how much they have tried or not tried, whether they've dug themselves deeper, and whether or not they actually want to be unstuck. Is an interesting, perspective on it. I worked with one leader who was stuck he felt he was stuck in a position, in a job, going anywhere. And through the conversation, he had been stuck in that job for 10 years. And as we discussed about what he thought he was missing and what his assumptions were, and what really gave him meaning, what really motivated him, and what he was focusing on, was other people thought he should get promoted. He was actually quite happy. He didn't feel stuck because he had a job where his responsibilities ended at 6 p.m. And what he really loved to do was to coach kids' sports in the evening. That's what gave him a sense of meaning and value. But because of pressure from his family and friends and his own internal pressures, he thought he was stuck in a job that wasn't going anywhere. But actually, the job was the perfect job to enable him to do what he loved. So even though he'd been stuck for a really long time, as we explored what he really wanted, it became pretty clear that it was giving him something that was important to him. So he wasn't stuck, and this is where attention matters and cognition matters as well, because as he shifted his thinking to, I'm not stuck in this job. I am choosing this job because it gives me an opportunity to do what's meaningful to me and create value for my community. And that's what's really important to me. And as he shifted that perspective, it actually shifted his mindset, his attitude, his motivation. He went to work with a different reason. And interestingly enough, as the story went on, they offered him a promotion and he turned it down. He said, I want to do this in the community, and if I take that promotion, I can't do that anymore. And actually, in that organization, they respected that decision and actually sponsored some of his sports teams. So it became an interesting idea. So there you go. So how long they're stuck matters, and that helps us determine, do they want to be unstuck? Is there some value in that? Or is it a cycle that's a really long-term cycle, because the amount of work that it's going to take will be quite different. Again, depending on how fast you can come to the clues and keys along the way. So next is, what do they want instead? So if you are stuck and you'd like to be unstuck, that is something. So what do you want instead of being stuck? I'd like to be unstuck. Great. Well, and if you were unstuck, then what would happen? So, or if you weren't in a job that you hated, if you weren't in a relationship that it feels like it's going nowhere, if you weren't on this continuous treadmill, if your boss wasn't a jerk, what do you want? So again, this is that future focus. We're not asking, why do you hate your boss? Why do you not like your job? Why are you not motivated? Not at all. What would you like instead of those things? Would you like to like your boss? Is that possible? Would you like to love your boss? Would you like to be able to make better decisions? And would you like to change your reputation? So all those things are outcomes. And this leads nicely into the next one, which is skill in laddering is essential, which is, again, we teach in our coach training what we call multi-directional or multi-dimensional laddering, where we talk about upward laddering, downward laddering, forward, backward, and different layers to that in different contexts. But the ability to help people move incrementally in their thinking, not big steps, not imagine yourself unstuck, what would happen, Because if people are really, really stuck, they can't imagine a world where they're not stuck. So laddering means we're helping people create incremental movements. Okay? So if you weren't completely stuck, you were just a little bit stuck, what would that be like? Almost. So you're helping them to move. But it's the same thing that I did with this client that felt he was stuck in his job, or thought he was, as we explored, well, what's important to you about being promoted? And there was nothing, as we laddered upwards, there wasn't anything really important about being promoted. What was important to him came up as being able to serve his community through sport and help kids. So as he figured out, here's what's really, really meaningful to me. Now looking at my situation of stuck from that place, how does it look now? And in his case, he realized he wasn't stuck. But in some cases, it's a bit harder. So there can be helping to build some thinking patterns that are more skillful, managing emotions, managing attention, getting in touch with our motivations, our deep-seated motivations and values, and being able to slowly help people to move is key. And lastly, ownership, accountability, and responsibility. People often need to take ownership of their stuckness because they're the one that got them stuck. And accountability and responsibility. Very often people that are stuck, it's easy to become a victim if we're stuck and play the victim and look at it from that perspective. So we have to take ownership or help our clients take ownership of, I am stuck and I'm the one who needs to help me get out of here. But the other sort of key behind this is this idea of what are we in control of? So I'm in a company and the company was bought out and I have a new organizational structure. It's confusing, there's ambiguity, I'm not sure, I feel like I'm stuck. Well, there's a sense that that's the reality that we're in that moment. What am I in control of in that? If I'm not a decision maker, if I'm not an influencer, then what am I actually in control of? If my boss is difficult to work with, what am I in control of? Do I feel stuck because he doesn't treat me well? Well, I'm not really responsible for how he treats me. I can change my behaviors and maybe manage conflict differently, stand up for myself, say no, whatever. I can develop some skills, but in the end, his attitude towards me is his attitude. I'm not in control of that. What can I take ownership of in this situation of me being stuck? What am I accountable for? And what am I responsible for in order to help me move or to help other people see the situation differently? So very quickly, I went through a lot of things that are actually quite deep in the practice, but I've talked way too much for my liking, and hopefully not for yours yet. But let's pause and let's see, are there any questions that are emerging as you think about this whole stuck thing? What have you learned? What questions do you have? I'd be happy to have you do some interaction, and if not, then we'll just finish a little bit early. So feel free. I just need to pause my video for a second, but I'll be right back. I'm not going anywhere.
Hi, Craig. It's always me. I have some questions.
Mm-hmm.
But I would wait for others to see if anyone has questions before, so I wouldn't give space.
Thank you for your bravery and your kindness. Anybody else have a question before Dariana shares hers? Okay, Dariana, give it a go, and we'll see. Hopefully it's of interest to others. I think it would be.
One of the things was about not being in hurry. Well, as a coach, I don't have to be in a hurry, but it may happen that the person in front of me, in this case the client,
Hmm.
considers his time precious, and he is blind enough, let's say, to not see again, if he needs a coach, he's a person that in some point is raising a flag, okay, but he may not recognize or be open enough to give that time. I mean, he might be scared as well, and therefore block me and tell me, okay, but if you didn't understand what's the problem yet, so you know, we are not on the same line. So I don't have to be in a hurry, but sometimes it comes from the other side.
And that's the key, right? I think the idea is, as a coach, don't be in a hurry. You know, don't get caught up in the urgency. Don't be like in a hurry to solve the problem. Our clients may be under time pressure. And again, that's another factor that we would want to explore. And that's where we're asking, like, how do you feel right now? I want to get out. I feel trapped. I feel stressed out. I feel crazy. Okay, so, you know, so there's maybe some immediate relief that's needed for this particular individual. And it's a bit, this is that laddering sort of incremental piece that we want to look at, is to say, they might need to just calm down a bit, look at their situation, explore some things, and begin to make it. But sometimes there's a real urgency and they need to do something immediately in the coaching session in order to take action. But again, the role of the coach, of course, would be then to make sure that that's a well-explored possibility and it's not detrimental, or it's not going to make it worse, hopefully. Does that help at all?
Yes, thanks.
That's that part, right? Is that the emotional experience. This is what's their experience of stuck. If they feel this like, well, I'm stuck and I'm panicking and I'm crazy and I need to do something about it. Again, I had a client like that. They were so freaking out about being stuck. And then I asked them, well, how long have you felt stuck? And they said, oh, 10 years. And I said, well, what's the urgency, you know, now? You know, has something changed, or are you just tired of it, right? And if you're just tired of it, then again, this urgency might be part of your stuck cycle. I feel like I get stuck, I'm comfortable, and then I feel like I'm getting uncomfortable. I need to do something about it. I try to do something about it, and I stop doing something about it, and then I get comfortable. Okay, was that we are all stuck in delivering coach training practice. I hope it will be better. Not sure what that means, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe, can you clarify? We're all stuck in delivering coach training practice. Maybe while you're doing coach training, is that what you're suggesting? Well, I guess, you know, part of the reason why we bring this topic up is, one, it's an experience of especially beginning coaches. Very often they'll feel stuck. I don't know what the question, because the situation. Is your opinion? Yeah, because it's very common for coaches to get stuck early on in their journeys, but also it's regular experience for even very, very experienced coaches where, you know, our clients are in different places. I worked with a client who was stuck in a organization, partly because his leadership was valued and it created value for shareholders, and he didn't feel he could leave even though he wanted to leave. Because of the effect of that on the organization and the potential loss of jobs for people, because there wasn't an adequate replacement in view. So that was a, you know, very different type of stuck situation with a high level of maturity and leadership that he had. That's the situation. And I think right now, definitely, some coaches are finding it a bit hard to find clients. Some coaches are adapting quite well. Okay. So I'm asking leadership is low level, so we need more energy to involve our work and not to get stuck. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. If I would say that when leadership is low level, either you're at a low level so you don't have that much influence, or there's I'm assuming that's what you mean, versus a low the quality of leadership in your organization is poor, uh, uh, which could be another potential area where people are stuck. But yeah, I think if leadership is not good, or we're lower in the level, then we might need energy to not to do our work and not get stuck. Not totally understand the question. Sorry. All right. And that's luckily my slide said questions and possibly answers. In this case, I don't know if I can answer it. Is there any other questions before we wrap up for the evening? Yes, Dariana, try again, and maybe Dejan, if you have a chance. Okay, that's all right. Dariana, sure, one more question.
What happens is, if, for example, as a coach, the person in front of us is somehow so stuck, but also so afraid that when we get to the bottom of the whatever can be the problem, this person is actually understanding clearly that what makes him stuck is a specific problem. It can be a problem in the career or whatever, a situation, but he is afraid to take a step. So, I mean, should I feel it like it's almost a failure? I mean, I got to the problem, I'm a good coach, I understood it, but eventually that person didn't find enough courage to make a move.
Thank you. That's a great, no, that's a great question, because what you're doing is actually you're finding out that where they think they're stuck is not where they're stuck, which is a very common thing. So it's not that it's not that I'm stuck here, it's I'm stuck, I don't have the courage. Exactly. Right? So but I just want to just clarify that that's important, because now you're going to work with that, right? So in order for this to happen, maybe this needs to happen first.
Yeah, but for example,
and that's another layer.
Yeah, you made the example of your client, okay? He thought he was stuck at work, but eventually it was the expectation of the others that made him feel that way, okay? Yeah. But in that moment, so I believe that the best way for him to make a move was to speak clearly to the family or whoever he loves that cares so much about him, that make him feel like overwhelmed, and tell them that this is not what I want. But let's say that that person in that moment doesn't have the courage to speak to them. So we understood what is the problem, he's happy as he is, but still the expectation of the others are there, and he has fear to face them, to speak to these people. I mean, this is just an example, okay? So I mean, am I failing, or the person is not finding the energy to do that?
Well, I guess I'd hit it, I'd answer it on a couple of levels. One, there's no right way to handle it. If I can just be happy that I've got my answer, and you can continue to put pressure on me all you want, but I'm okay. That's one way. It could be that talking to others might be a part of it. But again, as coaches, we're not really pushing people in those directions. It would have to be the client's own conclusion. That there's pressure from others, I'm okay. In this case with my client, he developed his own answer, right? Part of what I helped him to do was develop his own response, and it just came from his heart, He just said, what I really love to do is do this. This job gives me the opportunity to do that, and there's no response to that. You can't just slap someone when they say that. So, he was feeding his family. He wasn't, there wasn't anything wrong with that necessarily. So it's an interesting perspective. But very often, as is the case, is that where someone thinks they're stuck is not where they're stuck. That's why we don't want to go to why are you stuck, just what do you want instead. And as they move there, you might find that there's actually something holding them back. And then maybe even something else and something else and something else. It doesn't mean we're failing as coaches. It means we're creating awareness. The challenge for us is if our client just keeps throwing up excuses as to why they're stuck, then that really creates a big problem for us, because that means that they don't really want to change. They don't really want to get unstuck, that they're just finding new layers and new reasons. So this is where, you know, for me, I would just say, so we've uncovered all this stuff. Do you really want to move? Are you ready to move? And if you don't want to move, would you like to be ready to move? And what can we do to help you be ready to move? So there's sort of that, do you want to get unstuck? Yes, no, not yet. If it's not yet, I'm not sure. Okay, so then let's explore that. So what would it be like? And is there anything you need to do before you can begin to believe that you can get unstuck? And so we're really working with what the client gives us, but helping them to really identify what they want, creating a clear goal that they can move toward, that's going to hold them and help them to move out of whatever it is they're in. So thank you very, very much, everybody. Thank you for coming. Our time is up. 7:30 to 8:30 was our plan on Hong Kong time. I'm not sure where you are in the universe. It feels like you're in many places right now. A delight to be with you. Thank you for your listening and some good questions. Thanks, Dariana, for all your input and others as well. So have a good evening, and we'll see you next time. Serbia, thank you. Brilliant. Have a good evening. See you soon. See you soon.